emotional needs for love, their emotional need for acceptance, the emotional need to be embraced by their enemies override their common sense. This is still the way we see, and this is the reality of our people that we see today.
We're going to have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs. Even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the #2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being #2. You're going to go down and become #4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were #2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become #4. And the worst part about it is as you descend and go down to #4, those other groups are going to go up. And as they go past you, you're going to have major racial clashes in this country. You're going to have fights all over this country between blacks and Hispanics, blacks and Asians, blacks and poor whites. And black folk cannot fight all these groups. Everybody can not always be against black folk. They know that we are vulnerable and we are defenseless. And we cannot fight those groups. So what I'm saying now is that you're going to have this massive influx of immigrants into the country that are better equipped. They don't have your legacies. They don't have your disadvantages. They're walking across the border. They're going to get a free lunch. They don't have to pay dues. But you got public policies in this country that are equating them to black folk. They're equating them to black, and what we've allowed them to do starting in 1970 is to wrap themselves in black folks' suffering and pretend somehow they suffered along with black folk. And therefore, whatever program is created under this misguided label called minority, that they are equal to you and over you. And we're going to deal with that whole concept of minority in a few minutes too. So that's the problem with the influx of immigrants. And what they're doing is coming into the country and doing what we've never been allowed to do and we've never been bright enough to do in some senses, is to build your own community. You got to build your communities. You see, every group that when they leave their homeland, the last thing they do is look in the mirror. They look in the mirror and says, I'm going to America. And I'm going to go to America, I'm going to find me a community or neighborhood. Or I'm going to build one with people who look like me. And so that's why you go all over this nation, where they're coming out of Asia, you will find Vietnamese towns all over California, little Cambodias. You'll find a Chinatown in every major city. You'll see the Hispanics come in, they'll build a little Mexico, a little Havana, a little Hialeah. You find little Italys, French towns, German towns, Greek towns, Polish towns, but you cannot find one black town. So we got major problems. That's the second thing, is dealing with this influx of immigrants. And what I'm telling you is that they're not coming in here to be your partner or your ally. They're coming in to compete with you. And your black organization and your black leadership in this country is afraid to teach black folk how to compete with all these other groups. And they're afraid because they keep trying to create allies with them. You cannot ally with anybody who's planning on supplanting you. You see, if you go check the Council of La Raza, you check the Council of Salala, if you check the National Hispanic Defense League, if you check the National Hispanic Party, the first thing that all of them have is to change the issues in this country from white and black to white and Hispanic. They're planning on supplanting you. When the National Hispanic Party started in Miami in 1974, I was in the governor's office there. I was the only black in politics. That was the first item on their agenda, saying by the year 2000, they want to take blacks out of the equation. And that's why, as Dr. Price just said, that's why they control South Florida. They play to win. We play to play.
And then there's the final thing, and this goes all the way back. There's this general belief there's somehow going to be this grand coalition, political progressive coalition that's going to have these immigrants that come in that's going to reinforce, the people of color thing. And this is completely at odds to the reality. Once again, it's this African American tradition of where we believe that that everything is going to be all right in the short term because by and by Jesus is going to take care of everything. It's a real belief, or the belief that we can identify with the underdog. We can identify the poor immigrants, and that's the perception that many African Americans have. But it's not the perception on the other side. They don't understand that the game is not played politically that way. One of the sad and tragic facts is that nobody really speaks for many of the grassroots, poor, less educated, working class Americans. In the Common Destiny study, which was one of the greatest studies that was done, and it became clear that no matter what the arguments are, that less skilled, less educated American workers are those most hurt by immigration. These are the ones that no one is really speaks for. No one really identifies for these folks. And for African American workers, it goes way back. And this is another one of the sad and tragic facts, is that Americans have always given and preferred benefits to immigrants over some of our own, especially our African Americans. We've done studies that go all the way back into the 1890s, where we have Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington lamenting this fact.
There are many, many, many situations in Philadelphia today where black people, black workers are simply excluded. You don't see black people working as plumbers, as carpenters. You don't see them. Why is that? How can you have all this building going on in Philadelphia and see no black people? You see, Du Bois was concerned about that even back in the day. This exclusion of black people. Had we listened to him then, if the people who were responsible for social policy listened to Du Bois then, I think we'd be in a different place today.
It is very important to understand the world that you're in. If you don't understand the world that you're in, then you will simply work for the person who does.
The tragedy is that young people, when they see negative differentials between the African American community and the rest, have no idea that these have been strongly influenced by policy, and that immigration policy, which is currently by the non-enforcement of the laws and the labor laws, are exacerbating this fact. When I testified before Congress, I've tried to focus on a number of different things. One of them has been comical. The black representatives, some of whom were with me, I've served with when I was a former executive of the Congressional Black Caucus, like John Conyers, and others like Sheila Jackson Lee have not been. And with Sheila Jackson Lee, it's been very funny because when she's repeatedly said that all of us are children of immigrants, I've had to remind her at least 2 of my last 3 times that there's no way that the experience of African Americans coming to this country could be considered as immigrant experiences. That there are bad analogies, that as African Americans that we should be really concerned that we do not let the analogy go that the experiences of immigrants, legal and illegal, come to this country can be compared with the African American civil rights movement. We were people who were never in the privileged position, and that's what I make clear to Congress, that immigrants are in the privileged position for jobs, that they're the most vulnerable employees. They're the ones that employees prefer because they cannot question when overtime is denied to them with the Department of Labor. They can't go to OSHA for safety kinds of regulations, and that they're really vulnerable and compliant. These are the preferred employees. So there's an array of difficult things that affect our low-wage workers that Congress is ignoring, and it's ignoring by not enforcing our immigration laws or enforcing our labor laws. That's a tremendous disadvantage to the people who are most vulnerable, and theirs are not the immigrants, but they're our own citizens. Congressman Conyers, I think, is blind to the fact that his own constituents, especially his African American constituents, are suffering from unfair competition with immigrants. Labor is not exempt from the law of supply and demand. And what Congressman Conyers is doing is really placing his weight not in support of his constituents. There's a political correctness on the so-called progressive side that doesn't want to acknowledge that they have been on the side of immigrants with the assumption that it's immigrants who are really the most vulnerable.
Elected officials refuse to address the problem. The black elected officials refuse to address the problem. My own congressman refuses to address the problem. And I think the problem is black folks see all minorities as allies. And this is not the case. These people are not here for our common good. They're here for their own good. Where I don't have any ill will towards anybody, I also want to look out for my race. I'm a black American. I've never used a hyphen. But I will refuse to turn my back on my race and see what's going on in South Central to my people and let these people come in here and just take over. I'm not going to sit back and watch it. And I think it's a terrible thing, a horrendous thing, for anybody to see this going on and say, well, he's a minority like me, so I won't speak up. I don't care where he comes from. The key to this whole thing is stop the denial, stop the alliances of, in other words, he's a minority like me, so I can't speak up against him. If this was white folks committing these lynchings to us in South Central, what's going on, there would be an outrage in this country. We have had firebombs thrown through windows. We have had people's cars burned in the driveway because they happened to move into the wrong communities. We had a lady who moved to East LA, came to the state from the South, not knowing what East LA was. It was an all-Hispanic community. She wasn't there one day. We had another man who was burned out of his house in Torrance last year. We had 5 murders in Hawaiian Gardens just because the people were black. This would not be tolerated if this was white on black crime. But the fact that these people come here, and it's the numbers, sir. It's the numbers. They come here in the numbers, they build up the Hispanic community, and they get this sense of power against us. And there are race riots in the schools every day in Los Angeles. It never makes the media. The black kids are being run out of the schools every day and told to go back to Africa. It never makes the media. We are having people who are being discriminated against on every avenue of society. Economic, schools, even in our prisons now. They have drawn lines, and our prisoners in California are being beat and harassed and raped by Hispanic gang members who recently arrived here because of the numbers. My answer to you, sir, would be we don't need any new laws. Enforce the ones we got.